Everyone, I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Riska. Can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Sarasky?
Here.
Mrs. Koski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanis?
Here.
And Mrs. Yarko?
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just briefly before we get started, I want to thank everyone for being in attendance today. We are conducting these meetings in person, and we're one of the few communities that are. So if you are going to be in the audience, we just ask that you try to remain seated for as long as you can and not be wandering around the room to the extent possible. Keep your mask on. If you cannot keep your mask on for any reason, there is an area in the back where you can sit that's walled off, where you can sit without a mask, and there is the opportunity to talk up there. If you are going to speak on any item, we ask that you wipe down the microphone at least after you're speaking, if not both before and after you're speaking. And if you're speaking at the microphone, feel free to remove your mask if you feel comfortable. With that being said, I will turn it over to our city manager, Mark Vanderpool, for our city manager's report. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Mayor. The very first item on my report pertains to the Sterling Heights Fire Department closing in on a top ranking nationwide. So beginning in late August 2020, the fire department began a review of their operations through the Insurance Services Office, better known as ISO, for a public protection classification, better known as PPC. Currently, the fire department holds a PPC of a Class 2, with a Class 1 being the best score possible. ISO is a leading supplier of data and analytics for property and casualty insurance industry. Most insurers use the PPC classifications in their determination of premiums for residential, commercial, and industrial properties. A lower PPC class affects our residents and business owners with lower premiums. This process of review occurs as requested or as determined by ISO. The last Sterling Heights Fire Department review occurred in 2017, where we moved up from a Class 3 score to a Class 2 score. There are only a few departments in the state with an ISO 2 class rating and none with an ISO 1 rating in Michigan. Although the most recent review shows progress, the Sterling Heights Fire Department will remain, at least for now, with an ISO Class 2 rating, just short of the 1 by 1.51 points. Currently, the Sterling Heights Fire Department is in the 95th percentile of top-rated departments in the country. Through a data review, the fire department can make strategic plans to further improve internal processes and policies to reach the coveted Class 1 rating. Areas that they'll be focusing on and improving even further include community risk reduction, including meeting defined qualifications and additional training, data-driven analysis of our public education programs, water supply, and working collaboratively with the Sterling Heights Department of Public Works, which they certainly do now. While the department scored high in many areas, emergency communications was a near perfect score. Through the hard work and the help of safer grants as well as a transport model, the fire department has improved our ability to serve the community well, and they're committed to this spirit of continuous improvement. The process to maintain or improve our class is not easy. However, the benefits to the residents and businesses, rewards with respect to lower premiums and a world-class fire department are significant. And knowing that our interim fire chief, Ed Miller's in the audience tonight for another topic, I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize his good work in advancing the progress of our ISO rating, along with the team that worked very closely with him on this. So we've never been so close to an ISO 1 rating, and I'm confident, thanks to Mr. Miller's good work, that we're going to push this over the finish line in the next couple of years. And moving on to another topic, another piece of good news. You may know that we've been working hard over the years to get the 17-mile bridge replaced over the Plumbrook Drain. So this would be the bridge just east of Van Dyke on 17 Mile Road. It's noteworthy because we have 2 lanes, well, 1 full lane and a shoulder blocked off with barricades because the bridge in that area, it really is not safe to drive on right now. Of course, we're being extra careful with this, but what we're pleased to announce is that we have been successful in getting a $3.1 million allocation from the state to completely replace the bridge, and that work is scheduled for 2023. So we're just a couple of years off, and by the time we get through the full engineering and the bidding, it'll take us up to that time period. So the community can look forward to a new bridge there, and we're really pleased to be able to get that project fully funded and scheduled for construction. And in light of the snow emergency, I thought it'd be appropriate to give an update on where we stand today. The snow emergency was announced yesterday, so to give everyone ample time to get prepared. It was announced yesterday and it took effect at 7 a.m. this morning, which is about the time that our plows were able to get into the subdivision. So they worked throughout the night, clearing major roads, and then entered the subdivisions. Over 25,000 residents received direct electronic notification of the snow emergency through either an email or a text message, and another almost 60,000 were notified via social media and our website and other major media outlets. The notification process of our snow emergencies has expanded significantly over recent years, thanks to our Community Relations Director, Melanie Davis, and her team, their good work in this notification effort. So the on-street parking ban enforcement began at 9 a.m. this morning. Once major roads are cleared, it takes about 36 to 48 hours to complete all subdivision roads. So we're into the first day of subdivisions. We plan to be through phase 1 tomorrow morning, and then phase 2 the following day. So we should have this all wrapped up early Thursday morning, well within the 48 hours and likely shorter than that. So far, we have already issued 250 tickets for on-street parking, and I would imagine tomorrow will be a similar day. So by the time this is over, unfortunately, we will have issued between 400 and 500 parking tickets for violations. We don't like to write the tickets. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. We have to get the roads cleared. The roads have to be passable for emergency apparatus and other major equipment, and for the motoring public to get around the community. So we are enforcing, and we do that proactively, and we really have no choice. Once we get through the snow emergency, we'll then focus our attention on sidewalk clearing. It's important to remind residents that you do have to clear your sidewalks. It's very important, and we do enforce that ordinance as well. In cases when sidewalks are not cleared, we do often have to bring in our contractor to clear the sidewalk and then bill residents and businesses accordingly. I wanted to also remind residents that we promote on our website a number of on-demand snow clearing services. So if you have not been able to get your driveway cleared, you can go to our website. On the top right-hand corner, there's a little menu option that says, I want to. Click on it, And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see on-demand snow clearing services. You can click on that and download any one of the 3 services that we offer. You can do it this evening, schedule the service, and they will be out clearing your driveway tomorrow. For example, today, just to test this, I use the Lawn Guru service. I ordered it last night at about 10 p.m. from my smartphone, and they cleared my driveway today at around 2 o'clock. It was turnkey. There was no problem. It's a very cost-effective approach to not having to enter into a contract for the entire season. And it helps the contractors, too, to add jobs to their line of service as well. So we encourage individuals to use the on-demand service. It's really simple to do and very expedient. Lastly, on my report this evening, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we're at with COVID vaccines and what the city's doing to advance getting our residents vaccinated in Sterling Heights. So if you don't mind, I'd like to draw your attention to the slides before you. So I want to first review the phases. Many of you have heard this on the news now. You know where we're at in the phases, but let me just review the phases. I've done this once before, but it's a good refresher for all of us, including myself. First, and there's 2 significant phases, 1 and 2. 1 is broken down into 3 sub-phases, if you will. And these phases are used all across the state of Michigan. This is how Michigan has standardized the CDC phases. So there's 1A, and that's the long-term care facilities across the state of Michigan. I'm pleased to announce that in Sterling Heights, the couple of long-term care facilities we have been, the residents have received vaccinations, and that's through a private partnership with Walgreens and some other pharmacies, that they have gone out on site and administered those vaccines. So that's the good news there. In phase 1B, those are individuals that are 75 years and over, not covered in phase 1A. Those individuals have been getting their vaccinations mainly through the county health department every week, trying to schedule their appointments, or they could be getting them through through their hospitals where they're patients and so on. Also, part of 1B is frontline state, federal, and local responders, school and child care staff, correction staff, other essential frontline workers like inspectors and so on. Those individuals are all in Group 1B. Group 1B is underway as we speak. It's probably still going to take some time to get, well, as you can see here, the state is estimating that it'll take months to get through Group 1B. The green shows where the state is estimating that those phases will actually begin. And as the color green sort of fades out, that's when the groups are getting finished up. So for example, on 1C, individuals 65 and older, that started in January, and you can see that goes out for months as well. And in Group 1C, the last group is all remaining essential workers. Now, in phase 1, these 3 sub-phases, they overlap and can be merged together, and we're seeing that happen. These groups 1B and 1C are being done in many cases simultaneously. So I bring this up for 2 reasons. First, the county health department is very involved in phase 1. What we're thinking about as a community and what the city council is taking action on this evening is for phase 2, which, as you can see from this chart, if you look out, phase 2 is everyone else, ages 16 and over, those not covered in phase 1. So that's mass vaccinations. So the state is estimating that this phase will begin, if you see the gray shade there, sometime in June, July. Now, if you have been tuned into some of the latest federal reports, they're estimating that this is actually going to be accelerated by a couple of months, and this phase will actually start in earnest in April. So as a community, we need to be prepared for phase 2, and that's what we're highly focused on. So what is phase 2? Interestingly, this is where at the federal level, they're estimating that we'll have sufficient supply. As you know, the supply chain is still very slow. Dosages are coming out in a manner that's, less than desirable. There'll be slowing demand in phase 2 as mass vaccinations take root, and so on. Now, routine distribution will occur to any provider enrolled in the COVID-19 vaccination program. I'm going to talk about that shortly. And what's interesting in phase 2 is allocation will no longer be distributed through the local health departments. Instead, providers, which include all pharmacies, hospitals, private companies, healthcare providers, and local EMS providers will be involved in phase 2 vaccinations. Providers will be able to order vaccine through what's called the state MICR system, which we are fully enrolled in right now. We've gone through that process. We've had the county medical authority doctor approve our application, and we're now just waiting for the final step, which is provider approval. Once we have provider approval, our EMS department, our fire department, will be able to order dosages and begin providing vaccinations to the community in phase 2. And in order to do that, on the agenda this evening is a lease that the City Council will be considering for approval at the old Sears drive-through auto facility, and that's up at Lakeside Mall. It's a great location. The drive-through amenity is ideal because when this starts in April, obviously we're still going to have inclement weather. Individuals will not have to get out of their car. There's ample parking up there and so on. So we're very pleased to be able to work through this arrangement with the current owner of the now closed Sears facility. They've been very good to deal with and understand the importance of this facility. So about the Sears lease, again, that's on the agenda this evening. I explained the location. The term would commence effective tomorrow through July 1st with 2 renewable options for a 3-month period. So a 6-month extension period, which will pretty much take us through the year if need be for the phase 2 vaccinations. The cost is well below market rate, and here's where the owner really needs to be commended. Essentially, they're charging us basically utility costs and fees to open up the facility, and really it's lease free. But in any case, it's $5,500 a month, again, way below market rates. And we believe this is fully refundable through FEMA, knowing that we're still operating under a local emergency and considering the pandemic we're living through. So we're very pleased to be able to work out this amenity solution and option for the community, and that we're ahead of the curve in getting well prepared for phase 2. And Mayor, if you don't mind, at this point, I would like to introduce our interim fire chief, Ed Miller, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we've been planning for this phase and the talent that we have in the fire department to get through this.
Chief Miller.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having me here to take up a few minutes of your time to explain where we came from in less than a year ago to where we're looking forward to for the upcoming year. So as far as our COVID response, if you think back to a little less than a year ago, we were worried about personal protective equipment, getting our responders up to speed with responding to and treating patients with this COVID, and we didn't stop with that. We've continued to make improvements. We've continued to work in partnership with the County Health Department, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, to make sure we're providing the best services to our residents. Once we got to a point where we were comfortable with supplies and our new emergency orders and processes, we didn't stop. We had a group of people that kept on working in planning for the what's next in the COVID era that we're in. As of October of this past year, we actually started a couple other planning processes to look forward through the phases of vaccinations and testing. We worked with the county in that planning of testing first of all, and then vaccinations locally, along with giving them facilitating options and opportunities for them to do pop-up vaccination sites, which we're starting to do in the county now, and also providing personnel to help in those situations. So our pre-planning consists of development of a COVID task force through the fire department. We've worked with city administration to provide testing, rapid antigen testing for city workers and essential workers, because there was a gap that was there. We've helped to fill that, and now the fire department's able to do rapid antigen testing and antibody testing for our city employees to keep them working. We've developed policies to how we respond as a fire department within the city, but a lot of those policies have been adopted in other municipalities within Macomb County. So I'm glad to say that we're leading the way on our COVID response, not only in Sterling Heights, but for the county itself. And we provided training recently for up 35 paramedics on the fire department for vaccinations. So they will be helping the county with giving vaccinations very shortly, and also doing antibody and antigen testing for our city employees. So we've really accomplished a lot in a short period of time. We've had a lot of help from other city departments as well. And when the time comes, we'll have other city staff assist us with the logistical aspects and components of the vaccination process that we're going to work in partnership with the county health department while we're still in the 1B, 1C phase. But that's still not enough. We're looking forward to phase 2, which is part of the lease process with Sears tonight. Again, we'll have that support of the other city staff to help us through that. It's a collaborative effort for the city itself, and it's being planned out right now. So we're going to continue to work with the county, because we're worried about our assisted living facilities in the county, or in the city, 27 of them. So far, 23 have a working arrangement with other services or the county itself to provide vaccinations for its residents. I called a couple this afternoon, such as Oakmont Sterling and Oakmont Manor, and they've already been visited by the county for vaccinations, and they're working on giving us some statistical information on how many of their residents have been vaccinated in these facilities. But as the county posts, and as we've looked at tonight with myself and Mr. Vanderpool, we estimate around 6,000 of our seniors have been already vaccinated, and that number is just going to keep on growing with the planning that we're doing. So it's a huge visionary goal to try to get our citizens vaccinated. Phase 2 is part of that. So we're looking ahead to get that done. We're trying to get the components in place, working with partnerships with other agencies to make sure that when and if and when the vaccines are available, we'll be able to provide them to our citizens in a very organized fashion, and Sears is being part of that. It's that out-of-the-box thinking that we've collaborated on that's gotten us to this point. So it's been very exciting. It's a lot of work, but I appreciate the assistance and the support of administration so we can move forward and have a well-defined plan looking forward.
And Mayor, just in conclusion, I also wanted to recognize the partnership that we're able to forge with Beaumont Health System, whereby they would actually store some of the dosages for the city while we're making the Sears site operational and administering vaccines out of there. I also wanted to highlight that the mayor has sent a letter to Department of Health and Human Services Director Elizabeth Hurdle explaining the importance of getting the provider approval activated as quickly as possible, because for phase 2, it will be all hands on deck. And there needs to be as many partners as possible collaborating. And we believe this is a really good model for communities across the state where they have certified paramedics that can be part of the solution. So with that, Mayor, we'd be happy to address any questions that you or the council may have. And if not, that does conclude my report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, well, since you opened the door for that, does anyone have any questions? Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Through the chair to Interim Chief. So I did hear, and of course, I'm happy to hear that Beaumont is helping with the storage, but what is our plan for once we are actually up and running? Because we would need continual storage, continually being provided these vaccinations. So are they going to continue to partner with us in order to maintain that stream?
That's correct. They have agreed to partner with us regardless of what vaccine we're able to have delivered to us. So if it's ultra cold storage to normal storage, they're setting aside space for Sterling Heights so we can store those vaccines.
Okay, great. Good to hear. And that's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarowski. Anyone else?
Mayor
Mrs. Zarko?
I just have one question. When we have this up and running, say at the Sears Center, is this for Sterling Heights residents only, or is this open to anybody in the county? Through the chair to
Yeah,
Interim Chief.
Thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd be happy to respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilwoman Zarko, yes, for our involvement, we would be administering dosages to Sterling Heights residents only. However, this lease does not preclude us from entering an interlocal agreement, for example, with the county, or entering an agreement with any other provider, say pharmacies, for example, or even Troy Beaumont Hospital, others that need off-site facilities such as this to help administer some of their dosages as well. So this facility provides some flexibility to bring in some other partners, including the county, and including, it's important to emphasize that what we're talking about right now is for phase 2. The county may have interest in using this facility for phase 1B and 1C, which is currently underway. We've already had discussions with the county. They have expressed interest in using the site. The site that they currently have at Baker College is not going to be available to them for very long. So this provides flexibility to help others also outside of Sterling Heights, but what we're involved in will be Sterling Heights residents.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Through the chair to the chief, I'm not sure, whoever. So is the plan, since these are for Sterling Heights residents, who's going to be scheduling appointments, or is it not going to be by appointment? What, do we have a plan for that?
It's part of the upcoming planning process. Our initial goal was to establish a site and see the amount of personnel and the space we would need, and then look into the planning process. Phase 2, the county's not going to be the one that's going to be scheduling anymore, so that would probably be more on us to make that arrangement. So, but that's the next step as we move forward.
Okay, I think it's fantastic. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Very good information. We're looking forward to being able to offer this to our residents, and I want to thank the administration, fire department, and any other department that had a hand in making this happen. Certainly, we have been, since the start of this pandemic, really it's been all hands on deck. None of the other business has slowed down much, if not, getting busier, and adding on to that a new layer of work that everyone has done so well. So I'm proud of our entire team, and this is another great step, and looking forward to being able to hopefully get as many of our residents who want the vaccine vaccinated as soon as possible. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. And with that, move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is a public hearing, and this is to consider the application by Cassaday Structural Steel Incorporated to amend the final cost of the real property investment made pursuant to Industrial Facilities Tax Exemption Certificate IFEC number 2018-140 at 40675 Mound Road. We had a presentation scheduled by our Economic Development Director, Luke Bonner. He was not able to be here with us today because of the weather conditions. The representative from Cassaday Steel is also not able to be with us today. So we are likely, I'm going to entertain a motion to postpone at the appropriate time, but being that this was on the agenda, I believe I'm probably supposed to go forward with the public hearing. So what I will do is I will open the public hearing at this time, knowing that we likely will not be voting on this item until the next council meeting. So I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to comment on this item? Seeing nobody, I will close the public hearing. And then council, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I would entertain a motion to postpone this item to the March 2nd, 2021 city council meeting.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is an ordinance introduction. And this is to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 51, Article 3 of the City Code to update and enhance regulations governing the preservation of trees. We have a presentation from our city planner, Chris McLeod. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool, if I could trouble you to bring up the tree preservation presentation, greatly appreciate it. So as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, tonight is the potential, go up, there, yep. So tonight is the consideration for introduction of a tree preservation ordinance amendment, which has been in the making over the last year or so, which was originally proposed as part of strategic planning for 2020. Administration since that time has been working with our legal staff to draft the amendments. There we go. From strategic planning as a part of our administration review, then it's gone to Sustainability Commission as part of their review and their recommendation ultimately to this body. And now it's obviously before you for consideration. This is largely born out of our Green Macomb movement that we participated in for the last 5 years or so, where it originally became known in terms of our tree preservation, our tree canopy area, and our limited tree canopy area, as part of that effort to try to preserve what we currently have, and then obviously all the city's other efforts that have gone into place in terms of actually trying to increase the amount of plantings going in within the city. I'm not going to read through all these, but the goals and intent is basically of this ordinance is to simply say, we understand that the woodlands that we have remaining within the city are obviously very precious. We need to protect them to the greatest extent possible, but also recognizing that there's a marriage between potential usage of your property as well as the preservation of trees. The ordinance also, one of the goals is to make sure that if trees do have to be removed to a certain degree, that we're making sure that they're going back in. And ultimately, we'll describe that in just a moment. So this is a tree canopy map. This came out of the Green efforts, showing basically our main areas for tree preservation. Most of these follow most of our environmental corridors within the city, but obviously sporadically throughout the city, there's remaining woodlands as well that ultimately should be preserved as well. Present tree canopy. In terms of the areas where we have red areas are the areas that are most lacking in terms of tree preservation. Not surprisingly, you can see the corridor running right up the middle of the city, lacking tree canopy there. But as you get to the greens and darker green areas, where the tree canopy is strongest and most dense in terms of its percentage of coverage. So summary of changes, basically getting into what the ordinance proposal is at this point. So right now, regulated trees within the city are any trees that are 6 inches in diameter or greater. That's with the caveat of saying if it is a quote-unquote desirable tree. For instance, a cottonwood tree, which we have a substantial number of, is not considered to be a desirable tree. So that would be excluded from today's calculations as the ordinance sits now. But we'll get into that in one moment. So current preservation requirements, 37%. We're proposing to shift that to 50%. So a mild 13% increase in terms of that strict number. But I don't want you to think that that's the sole change going on here in terms of ultimate preservation. Tree preservation of landmark trees. Right now, the ordinance basically says that they're treated in much the same way as a normal tree. A landmark tree is a 32-inch caliber tree, pretty significant tree. Unless that tree has a specialized variety of tree, then we do have lesser caliber designations for those to be landmark trees. The new ordinance would basically say, if you're going to remove that tree, you need to replace it at 100%. Right now, we basically say you have to replace it at 37%, so that's a significant upgrade, going from 37% replacement to 100% replacement for landmark trees. Non-desirable trees, again, going back to that. So right now, if you have a non-desirable tree, you can take it down, no questions asked, the ordinance doesn't stop you. So if you had an entire wooded lot that's all cottonwoods, our ordinance right now would not stop you from taking that down. You would have nothing to say about it. The proposed ordinance says that any tree that's 6 inches or greater, whether it's desirable or undesirable under that old category, would be a regulated tree and would have to be calculated as part of the tree preservation requirements. So that is a pretty significant change in terms of our stance, because most of our woodlands, to be honest with you, are not quality, what an arborist would say are the most quality trees around. They're not maples, they're not oaks. They're scattered within there, and we do have good pockets of them, but a lot of our trees are what would normally be considered non-desirable trees. In terms of tree preservation fund, this is a fund that's been around within the city for some time. The ordinance doesn't specifically call for this, though. We have utilized it in the past in a couple different instances. So the ordinance now works this in. So if you are not able to fully preserve the amount of trees that you're supposed to on site, or fully replant the number of trees that you need to on site, we do allow you to pay into the city's tree preservation fund. We require that at a 1.5 times rate. So let's say you're required to replant 100 trees. You can't do it. You would actually have to pay at the city's rate of a cost per tree at 1.5 times. So you'd actually be paying for 150 trees into that fund. And then those would be planted throughout the city, city parks, city properties, city rights of way in terms of replanting. Some simpler things in the ordinance. Right now, we have a lot of developers come in and they ask to do grubbing, basically taking out the understory in our wooded areas so they can do their surveying work and so forth. Right now, there really isn't a provision for them to do that. We basically took our practice that we actually implement an administrative means right now and wrote it into the ordinance that says, do the tree survey first, in case the person doing the brush hogging gets a little overzealous and starts taking out trees they shouldn't. That way we at least have an analysis of what trees are there and what trees may ultimately have been removed. Tree preservation area protection, we just brought that into best practices. Streamline of review submittal. Right now, 10 paper copies is technically what's required. Obviously, our review process has gone completely digital, so we've just updated that. Woodlands map. Traditionally, there has been an official woodlands map that says which areas of the city, as part of those woodlands, say this is the best area for preservation. We've eliminated that. We basically said all the woodlands count, and a tree survey should be done on all properties. And then in terms of consistency of application, right now there is a delineation based on property size. We've taken that out again. It does, in our mind, it doesn't matter whether it's a 1 acre site or a 50 acre site. The woodlands are the woodlands. They should all be counted and all be preserved at the same rate. So, as I noted, this did go in front of the Sustainability Commission in their December and January meetings. They did a pretty thorough analysis of it. I'll definitely admit that. They did make some recommendations. So basically, making sure that the trees are native for the state of Michigan, that they would not be invasive species. Slight tweaks in terms of what was considered to be grubbed and grubbing and so forth. And then one of the major changes was providing for, Green Macomb went through and did an analysis of all the trees that are best suited for Macomb County. That is going to be our planting guide, so to speak, in terms of what trees should go back in. So that'll be attached as our policy document for the types of trees that should go back in. And then, so they did make a recommendation for approval of this draft. They also did indicate as part of their motion that the tree canopy preservation totals should be tracked. So what trees go out or taken out and what trees are planted, and try to do, excuse me, further analysis in terms of where our tree canopy preservation percentage is at any particular time. So they did want to see that move forward as well. And this is just a sample of the tree species, the chart that was drafted by Macomb County as part of our involvement with the Green Macomb group. Again, basically saying what types of trees, the types of conditions, where they should be planted, right tree, right place, right time, making sure that we're not putting a tree in a location that it shouldn't be placed. With that, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. At this time, I will open it up for the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to introduce the ordinance amending Chapter 51, Article 3 of the City Code to update and enhance regulations guarding the preservation of trees.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor Taylor. I do have some questions for Mr. McLeod through the chair. Mr. McLeod, so where would we actually find that list? How can the citizens get a hold of that Green McCombs list for the desirable trees?
Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if the ordinance goes forward, it would be posted on the city's website, on the planning website, so that way we have obviously a prominent location for it. Obviously, we want to share that information with anyone that we possibly can, but again, it would be posted on the website, available to everybody.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And then I do have another question. How does this apply, this potential ordinance, if we vote this through, apply to existing but undeveloped properties not currently for sale but not yet sold? There's a couple of beautiful wooded properties abutting some wetlands right off of Shaner on Utica area there, and wondering how this would apply to that, that type of a for sale property.
Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So any property that is up for development would be subject to this provision. So as soon as the ordinance is adopted as a regulatory ordinance, there isn't necessarily any grandfathering or anything of that nature. That's a zoning term. As a regulatory ordinance, everyone is subject to it. That is for development properties. I do want to make that distinguishing mark, though. If you own a single-family lot as a resident, this ordinance does not apply to you. This is for development pieces.
Right.
So, but I also want to be clear, if you are developing a subdivision of single-family lots, the development itself is subject to the provision, just not the individual lots on the back end, so to speak, once a resident lives there. So.
Very good. Thank you. I have no further questions. Mayor Taylor, thank you.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To follow up through the chair to Mr. McLeod, so for the current regulations, we have even a development coming up today. Would these regulations, if they're passed, apply to that development going forward?
Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would, from the standpoint that before you tonight is a proposed conditional rezoning. So they still need to go through, if they were successful, they would need to go through the site plan process. So basically at that point, they would be subject to zoning provisions, or I'm sorry, the
Ordinance.
tree preservation provisions.
Okay. We already have a tree fund, correct, Mr. McLeod, the chair?
Mr. McLeod.
That is correct, yes.
How much money do we currently have in our tree fund, or what is the value of our current tree fund?
I'll be honest, I don't know the current value. It's been paid into several times, but DPW does take out of that fund to plant trees along our right-of-way. For instance, within the last couple of years, we've had at least two significant pay-ins to it, to the tune of somewhere in the mid $40,000 range total. Like I said, I know that DPW has been drafting from that to plant street trees as part of their program as well.
Well, I appreciate the report from the Sustainability Commission. It seems like they really dug deep into the subject and really studied it from all angles. They had some interesting remarks that I thought were important to it. I would just add that in the future, I'd like to see the inputs and the exports from the tree fund, maybe on a yearly basis or whatever, just so that we know if developers are using it, and maybe we have to tweak it, because I think the end goal of this ordinance is for developers to preserve trees rather than pay us to put up new trees. I want to see kind of what's going on there, and if it needs to be tweaked in either direction. Either we're asking too much developers, or even if we need to increase the cost, if it just seems to be that they're using the fund a lot. Because right now, I think the fund, at least to me, is very opaque. I'd like to know, just to make sure that we're trying to get forward on improving our tree canopy. I think this is a great ordinance. I'm glad it's finally before us. I'm going to vote in favor of it because I think it's going to improve our community greatly. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else, council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Koski.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. McLeod, please clarify for me. We love our cottonwood trees. So we're going to count them to do the tree preservation. What happens if a developer says, I really don't want to replace that, I just want to keep it? Are we going to be able to say, okay, these are the trees that you cannot keep, but you must count and replace. Is that correct?
Mr. McLeod?
Thank you. So the way that the ordinance is drafted, that all trees are treated the same. So whether it's a maple or cottonwood, again, to get to that point where we say preservation is equal, so in terms of a developer could say, this tree is a maple tree, but it has to come out because this is where my development needs to be placed, and it may, and vice versa, save a cottonwood. But again, long story short is we treat them all the same. We don't allow you to replant cottonwoods as part of that, but we would simply say, if you have cottonwoods, they have to be, and that's all you have on your site to meet the preservation requirements, you have to keep them. As Councilperson Radke indicated, the idea is not to get to the point where someone has to use the tree fund. We want to keep the trees on the site, or, second option, replant on site. Third option and final option, which is the least desirable option, is pay into it. But to answer your question, hopefully, is that regardless of whether it's a maple or cottonwood, the ordinance would treat it the same, preserved in the same manner. Does that answer your question or no?
Pretty much. Thank you.
Council, anyone else? Thank you for the information, Mr. McLeod. I don't have any questions for you, so with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is a ordinance introduction, and this is to consider introduction of a map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conditionally rezone property situated on the west side of Van Dyke, south of Metropolitan Parkway, in section 28 from M1 Light Industrial District to C3 General Business District, case PZ 20-0004. Paul Duncan. Presentation from our city planner, Chris McLeod. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Council, Mr. Vanderpool. As you know, before you tonight is a proposed conditional rezoning introduction for those three properties located just south of 16 Mile Road on the west side of Van Dyke. This request is to go from M1, our current light industrial district, to C3 General Business District. The specific purposes of constructing a hotel as well as a quick serve restaurant located the current use is a non-conforming single-family homes. These homes are essentially rental homes for this site, or for these three sites. The current zoning, again, is M1. The applicant is proposing that quick-serve restaurant is just over 3,000 square feet. It's in McAllister's. We'll get into that in just one moment, with a drive-through, and then a four-story, 122-room Wood Spring Suite hotel. The zoning map here, as you can see, this is kind of the end of the line, so to speak, in terms of our commercial district on the west side of Van Dyke. But basically, it's contiguous with the current True Hotel and the shopping center just to the north of that. You can see the Myers facility on the east side of Van Dyke in its location. As you go to the south of this site is the former John R. Fuel site. Most of you probably are familiar with that one. That is currently under review for and getting permitting for a surgical center that plays largely into potentially this consideration for this conditional rezoning. Further to the south of that is the FCA facility. Kind of showing you the layout here. Unfortunately, with the Google imagery to get this, the True Hotel hadn't shown up yet, but it is located just to the right-hand side of that bright green box. Kuka facility further to the upper right-hand corner. That is to the westerly direction. To the south, you can see the former John R. and then the undeveloped portion of FCA. That is actually being in part developed right now as a storage facility for FCA for the staging area for the plants. But you can also then see the shopping centers immediately to the east of this site down to the bottom right. And then again, across the street, you can see the Myers development and home to also the new Culvers that was just constructed not too long ago. Taking a look at the Google image here, a little closer, a little dead on in terms of straight up aerial. Again, to the south is a proposed, again, receiving permits currently for a surgical center. This site would be interconnected with that site. And then moving to the north, an interconnection as well, proposed interconnection to the shopping centers and the True Hotel further to the north. The master plan designation does call for this site as industrial. However, as you can see, it is the three sites essentially, or the one overall site, immediately to the south of the Van Dyke mixed-use district, which calls for a mixture of uses. Again, the question ultimately becomes is, with these ultimately four properties, if you include the Pioneer site, which is the surgical center immediately to the south, and then being surrounded by the larger industrial uses. Are these 3 or 4 sites, ultimately a plan for industrial? Are those viable industrial sites? Conditions have changed slightly from the fact that the Pioneer Surgical Center to the south has come into play. That is a use that is allowable by the M1 district. So you're now putting a surgical medical office directly to the south. And the question becomes is, with these 3 properties, ultimately, would it be best served to have an industrial site between the hotel to the north and a shopping center, and then a surgical center to the south? Is it still viable for these 3 homes to be converted into a true industrial site? And that is something that's ultimately desirable with that proposed land use pattern, albeit not truly consistent with what the master plan envisions for that area. This is the site plan showing to the Van Dyke is to the right-hand side of the screen, showing the McAllisters closer to the frontage, parking in front, kind of the drive-through lane on the back side of it, and then the separation between the 2 sites, and then a common access drive accessing the Wood Springs to the rear portion of the site or to the west portion of the site. This is the landscape plan showing the landscaping throughout the site, around the borders of it. And as noted, tree preservation requirements would be in play here. There's not a ton of trees on the site, but some. But obviously, as part of the site planning process, that would be fully vetted in terms of moving forward. Aerial perspective of the proposed Wood Spring Suites, full brick construction with the exception of the brown area in the middle there. That's a wood-sided effect. Not to speak for them, but that seems to be part of their branding scheme. That seems pretty common in most of their designs. This is looking from the south to the north, basically if you were standing on FCA's roof, so to speak, kind of looking towards the northerly direction. This is looking at the McAllister site, mostly brick building, primarily brick building. At the front, patio space. On the back side of that building is the drive-through. You can see just to the far left would be the Wood Springs. The blank hotel in the back is the True Hotel that sits to the north of this. But again, showing the McAllisters, which is a relatively new brand for the state of Michigan. There's only a couple within the state itself. In terms of the rezoning analysis, the applicant is requesting 4 different variances as part of this. You do have the authority to grant these as part of the conditional rezoning package. They are requesting an off-site sign. That is actually a good thing from the Office of Planning's mind, since this potentially could be 2 different sites. We encourage them to provide a single sign for the overall development. Otherwise, they would have had 2 signs, so we encourage them. And they willingly complied with having a singular sign. Technically, it's considered an off-site sign by our ordinance. So again, that's 1 variance. Proximity to existing freestanding fast food restaurants. McAllister's isn't truly a fast food. It's considered to be a fast casual, but based on our ordinance, as soon as you have a drive-through, you're considered a fast food. Today's day and age, in terms of food uses, almost everyone wants either a carry-out window, a drive-through window, whatever the case may be. So that provision, they needed a waiver from existing fast food or other drive-through facilities. Rear yard setback, that's adjacent to the industrial. They wanted a reduction from 66 to 53 feet. Not a significant reduction in our mind. They do meet the minimum setback for a standard size building, but based on the height of the building, our ordinance pushed them a little further away, but they're asking for relief there. Again, it's basically Kuka's parking lot, not a significant issue in our mind. Reduction of stacking spaces for the drive-through. Our ordinance requires 10 spaces for a drive-through. They're requesting 7. Again, not a substantial issue there in our mind. Master plan and zoning land use, technically, again, doesn't technically meet the master land use plan. The C3 zoning would provide for an extension pattern to the north, and then ultimately the proposed medical surgery center to the south, and then retail hotel to the north. Again, that land use pattern, no cohesion of whether industrial use on this property is still something that we'd like to see. So that concludes the presentation. So with that, any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them. We do have John Gaber, the attorney for legal counsel for the proposal, as well as Paul Duncan, the actual applicant in the audience. I believe they would like to at least present some information to the council if you so choose. But with that, any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. I would open it up to the audience unless the petitioner wants to make a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is John Gaber. I want to thank Mr. McLeod for his thorough review and presentation of this project, this conditional rezoning. And I'd like to make a few initial comments and then turn the floor over to Mr. Duncan to tell you a little bit more about the development and the use and operation of these two facilities at the site. You see this is the entrance from Van Dyke, what the entrance drive would look like adjacent to both facilities. I have a couple of rezoning points I'd like to go through. Now, we went through this in detail with the Planning Commission, but just briefly, these are some of the major criteria in your zoning ordinance or justification for rezoning. The first standard is that the rezoning is consistent with the other zoning in the area. We believe it is because to the north and across the street, there is quite a bit of commercial zoning for that area. Number two, the rezoning is consistent with the other land uses in the area. Same thing essentially to the north and to the east. Our commercial restaurant, retail, and immediately to the north, another hotel type of use, the True Hotel. So we believe the rezoning is consistent with the other land uses in the area as well, satisfying that criteria. Number three, the proposed uses are better suited to the area than the current uses. As you know, there are 3 residential buildings currently, and this commercial fits much better with the area. Number 4, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the policies and uses proposed for the area in the master land use plan. As Mr. McLeod mentioned, this site is not specifically designated within the Van Dyke mixed-use commercial area, but it's one parcel away. Essentially, we're asking for an extension of that designation, basically with the C3 zoning, one parcel south. And we believe that this site will fill in a gap there and be a good complement to those other uses in the area and consistent with the master plan in that regard. Number 5, conditions are changing in the area, which make the proposed rezoning reasonably necessary. We think those conditions are, if you look at, you've got commercial on the north, commercial on the east, and you're going to have the surgical center on the south. So essentially, if this is left industrial, this little piece is going to be by itself, somewhat of an island on its own. So we think due to the changing conditions, particularly the surgical center, this condition is met as well. And then finally, number 6, the property is not practical of being developed as currently zoned. If you take all 3 parcels together, it's 2.9 acres in total size. And to get an industrial user in there with today's modern standards on a 2.9 acre site with the type of facades and the type of landscaping and such you're looking for in your, in your plans for this area, we think that's going to be a difficult task. So we don't believe that the site is really practical being developed as currently zoned. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Duncan. He's going to probably answer more of your questions about the practicalities of what exactly is a Wood Springs suite and what distinguishes it and makes it a great, feasible, and viable option for this site, as well as the McAllister's Deli, which is a new concept in the area. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, John and council. My name is Paul Duncan with Concord Hospitality. I'm going to go through the Wood Springs as well as touch base on the McAllister's. Kirk Fairley with the group developing McAllister's was unable to make it tonight due to the snow and ice that hit his location last night. So right here, you'll see a few examples of Wood Springs that have been developed in other areas. This gives you an idea of the different elevations, perspectives that are being built. They are very similar and common in a lot of aspects. And what we have done is really focused on the flat roof, giving it more of a traditional hotel, less residential feel, but it in our mind, it moderns it up. It is very similar to a few of these, specifically to the left. This elevation that Mr. McLeod showed earlier, gives you a good idea of what the finished product would look like here on Van Dyke. Our landscape plan, I understand we will have to go through a little bit more with tonight's new ordinance and the tree zoning, but we've really enhanced our landscaping here. We've got a little pergola sitting area out in the back behind our hotel. We've got a nice streetscape buffer that we've put along Van Dyke, and I think we've met or gone above in all aspects of the landscape ordinance. Real quickly, just in terms of what we bring to the community, roughly 300 contractors are going to be employed to build this. In total of a construction cost, about 1.3 of that $1 million will come from local businesses, supply manufacturing facilities right around here. They create full-time, part-time, contract basis jobs. We have annual maintenance. We have weekly landscape maintenance vendors that will be hired from local vendors here. Community support, job growth, tax revenue, and obviously bringing people in, spending in the community and supporting local businesses. One of the things that we really think that this brings to Sterling Heights, but any area that we go, is we're looking for an area that is very strong in terms of what can support the extended stay demand segment, which we're going after here. So one of the biggest drivers that we look for that Sterling Heights has just been blown away. A lot of our other locations we look at is the businesses of 150 employees within 5 miles. There are over 100 businesses within 5 miles and 20 that are within 1.5 miles of this site. 38,000 employees and migration in and high residential occupancy. The lack of extended stay or economic extended stay products in this area is another driver. There are 2 ESAs that were built back in 1997 or earlier, and then the only 2 new extended stay products that have come to town are the Homewood Suites and the Staybridge Suites, each of which have rates of over $130 per night. Otherwise, it's 18-plus-year-old hotels in this area. So what we are seeing in our market study, that we do a deep dive into every market that we go into, they're showing that our daily rates would be about 23% higher than what the national average is for the Woodspring Suites at a 5% occupancy bump over the national average as well. A little bit about ourselves, Concord Hospitality. We own, manage, and develop all of our, or not all of our hotels, but we do everything for these Woodspring Suites. So not only do we develop it, we're going to stay involved and manage it. We have a niche segment within our company that really drives for these extended stay products. And it is a niche. It's something that we look forward to try to, you're getting weekly guests or monthly guests. You are not going after the nightly transient hotel business that the true next door may be going after, or Comfort Suites would typically get. A couple letters of support I'd like to present here. One is from Ford Motor Company. Ford says, "Hi, Choice Hotels and Woodsprings have been a preferred hotel partner for years, and we are excited to have this option of a hotel for our employees and customers. Ford has used 17 different locations of our Woodspring Suites throughout the U.S. General Motors, hi Angela, Choice Hotels and Woodspring Suites have been a preferred hotel partner for years, and we are excited to have this option as a hotel for our employees and customers." So what this is that these guys bring in the GM Tech Center, the assembly plant, Chrysler assembly plant. They bring in specialized employees, and they need a place to stay for a week or a couple weeks at a time. This is our niche. This is what we're going after. People relocating to these areas to take a job at one of these facilities as well needing a place to stay for a month or two while they're looking for homes. We are catering to that business so that they don't have to sign a 6-month lease and then maybe have to go up and do a month-to-month after that. This is the good fit that has proven in other areas, and I think we'll do great here in Sterling Heights with the demand segment that you guys have in this local area. I'm going to jump through and also discuss McAllister's. So again, another few examples of what a McAllister's deli looks like. McAllister's is, here's a similar picture that Chris or Mr. McLeod has already shown on the front and the back side. This also shows the drive-through lane, which is not a typical drive-through lane that you would see at a Taco Bell or McDonald's. What it has is a touch screen. You come up to the board. You've already put in your order. You're not ordering from this screen. You touch the screen. You say, I'm here to pick up my order. You'll drive around, and a employee at McAllister's will hand that through the window to you. So McAllister's, they're known for their sandwiches, salads, spuds, soups, and their sweet tea. Over 500 locations nationwide. McAllister's is a franchise model. They will develop their own corporately owned stores, which is what this will be. They have a partner with Buckhalter Capital Group, which is the company Kirk is with, who was unable to make it. They are the exclusive developer for the McAllister's. To the similar aspects of the reasons why we're looking to go here, they have the same reasons: strong growth, a lot of employment within the area, heavy traffic along Van Dyke Avenue, a lot of options. So some of the things that they provide are the pickup window, pickup station out front of the front of the building, curbside pickup, but they do a lot of game day lunches, the corporate event caterings, and other special events. Their operational hours are 10:30 to 10 p.m. daily. They don't have everything's done by toasters, no frying, no need for grease traps, anything like that. Everything is healthy, fresh, fast food, done, made to order. They don't have any large delivery trucks. All their stuff comes in box trucks a few times a week. And with that, I will turn it over to see if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duncan. What we'll do now is we'll take comments from the audience first, and then when the city council is deliberating shortly thereafter, we'll have you come back up, so stay close in case we do have any questions, all right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I will open it up to the audience. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who'd like to speak on this item? Mr. Jefferson.
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. I think this is a great idea for that area. Good to see someone finally coming and trying to develop that area. But I know this is just a ordinance change, and what I want to talk about should be for the site review, and we need to start considering something with the change of the administration. People believing that will be done in 8 years now. With Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler going to electric vehicles, I believe we should start looking into getting charging stations into these places, and that should be part of the site review. And I don't know how many they would need to set up at their hotel facility, but for each room there should be a charging station for each car. And like I said, that should be in consideration starting today going forward for any site plan review or any review of any building coming into Sterling Heights. It should also be for housing too, because this is going to cost people. Either you're going to have an added cost to putting one in, or it's going to be an added cost at your closing cost for not having one. So I think this needs to be under consideration now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Resolved to introduce the map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conditionally rezone property situated on the west side of Van Dyke, south of Metropolitan Parkway in Section 28 from M1 Light Industrial District to C3 General Business District, case PZ 20-0004, and direct the applicant to proceed to finalize a proposed agreement so that the city council can further evaluate the offer of conditional rezoning of the property at the March 2nd, 2021 regular meeting.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor. I do have a few things. First of all, I think that if we left this property the way it's zoned, it's technically spot zoning. So because we have 3 houses on non-conforming property, I think it's unnatural rezoning and pretty much a no-brainer in my opinion. As far as the driveway, Mr. McLeod, through the chair to Mr. McLeod, will there be a deceleration lane on Van Dyke to get into that driveway?
Mr. McLeod?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most likely there will not be.
Okay.
Be a standard driveway entry and exit the site.
Okay, so what I like about the pictures that I saw was that it's an actual driveway that will contain the McAllisters and then the hotel. So we're not going to have any stacking that may occur onto Van Dyke. It's all going to be off of that driveway. And so that variance of the 3-car elimination from the stacking, I have no issue with at all. It's kind of cool to get new restaurants, new to Michigan in the area. We have another one before us tonight that is very exciting. So it's always good to see, new business that is elsewhere in the nation, but they want to come here to Sterling Heights. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you explaining, Mr. Duncan, the way that you survey the need of the area, because so often we hear, oh, another hotel going in? Why do we need all these hotels? So you explained that perfectly, and I really appreciate that. So now I have an answer when I get that question. And I was wondering if, Mr. Duncan, you had any comments as far as electric charging stations in any of your other hotels, or is that something that you're going to consider in the future?
The electric charging stations are something that we have done in other hotels. We have a range of hotels, by choice, Marriott, IHG, Hilton. What we have found is that typically, and granted times are changing and things are evolving, but those are much more seldom used and are typically on the higher end hotels, the couple $100s a night. Those are the folks that are coming to those hotels to stay there with the more expensive vehicles like a Tesla. As far as consideration for something like that, I think that we can make provisions to install those in the future. I think that's a good idea and something that we have done in terms of conduits and having the accessibility to add stations. But it is not something that we have done on any of these, or at this point think that there would honestly be much use in the near term.
Okay, because the automotive companies are really going to electrification, so it is something that you might want to consider. And also, speaking of price point, so can you tell me approximately what your price point would be?
So what our market study shows is that the first year, we will be at an average daily rate of around $55, and year two will jump up to 63. But what our average daily rate really is a weekly rate. So when you look at that, we are charging, $400 a week for someone to stay there. If we have a transient guest that wants to come just for one night, they are not paying $55 a night. They are going to pay more like $100, something typical and in line with the other rates. That's not necessarily the guest we're going after, and it causes more on our operational side, just additional work. So we make sure we charge a little bit more for those.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further. I'm excited about this. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Zarko?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Duncan. First of all, there's a need for the residential suites. You happen to mention contractors that come into the Shap plant, and my niece is one of them, and although she comes in sometimes for 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week, she might stay in the same hotel, but she doesn't always get the same room. Where she has thought about getting in a residential suite, but the ones that are here are around are just a distance for her to drive when she could just stay at the Holiday Inn and pretty much be across the street from Shap. So those are things that so I've understood from her perspective that there is a need for these residential suites. But can you explain to me, I know it's 122 units. Does that mean each unit could be a residential suite, and how is that laid out? I mean, refrigerator, microwave, are they larger rooms? Could you explain that to me, please?
Sure. So every room, all 122 are suites, which means that each room has a kitchen. Each room will have a full-size refrigerator. Some of our rooms will even have dishwashers. We'll have sinks, microwaves, cooktops, and it's a full kitchenette. It makes it so that these guests can, if they want to go to the Myers across the street, pick up groceries for the week, come back, store it in their fridge, they have that ability to have breakfast in the morning just as a normal morning if they were at their own house. So every room will have a full kitchenette. We have roughly half of our rooms will have double queens. The other half will have a queen suite. So it has the ability for, contractors that are 2 people to a room and want to stay there and still cook all week.
So it's similar to like an efficiency apartment, you would say?
Correct.
Okay.
Studio style.
Where do you have other Wood Spring suites in Michigan?
Well, the first one we opened up was just in Farmington Hills. So that one opened in October. There's another one already in Rochester Hills. The second one that we have opened is in Madison Heights.
Okay, and then the timeline, as soon as we can get you started with what you need on our end, what's the timeline to complete this project?
It takes about 12 months from the time we start breaking ground till opening.
Okay, and the other thing I want to say, it was really nice for you to bring in an outsider's perspective of our city, because we think we're great. But then when you come in and tell us how great we are, it makes us feel even better. So thank you. I wish you luck with this project, because the variances that you're asking for are within reason. So I wish you luck, and we'll see you on March the 2nd. I hope.
Thank you, Ms. Zarko. Mr. Radke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. McLeod. Mr. McLeod, looking at the report that you presented to us, I'm just going to read a line. I wanted to know what your opinion of this was. It says, "The buildings do not present an architectural design that goes above and beyond what the city requires." And I guess I'm curious about that line. Is it normal for the building, the way they look? Is it going to fit in with the area? Is it not as good as it should be. I'm curious about that line. If you could.
Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think they will fit into the area. I mean, the buildings, the wood springs will be, rough estimate, probably 85, 90% brick. Like I said, other than the small areas that are that wood siding type effect. The McAllister is largely brick. So from that standpoint, they are consistent with the architecture, particularly of the buildings to the north. So I think it will look, relatively seamless in terms of the design there. I think the set aside from this development, and speaking honestly about it from the one to the north, is that this one will, pairing it with the overall site design and the landscaping, this will be an upgrade, from that standpoint overall. And that's how I typically look at sites, is an overall. So you have architecture, you have landscaping, you have overall designs, put all that together, and I think, this ultimately will be an upgrade beyond that.
We talked about when we first did the Van Dyke mixed-use district, the changes we're going to be making, and hopefully that developers would take advantage of this. This is almost an extension of the plaza to the north, because they didn't move the McAllisters to the street. There's still a parking lot in front of it. We can't mandate those changes. Those have to be chosen by developers under the current ordinance, correct?
In the Van Dyke mixed-use district, that's correct, keeping in mind that this site, or these three sites, meaning compiling one, are outside of the Van Dyke mixed-use. So, this, as you know, provides basically an extension and an alignment, and as well as the site further to the south, the Pioneer Surgical Center, are all kind of in line with each other. So the idea is that working in conjunction, trying to create a cohesive traffic pattern. Hopefully no one who's staying at the hotel site has to go to the surgery center, but if you're there for someone who has surgery or something, if you came in from out of town, his sites work as one, essentially.
So this conditional rezoning would still leave the site outside the mixed-use district?
Yes, it would, because we're not rezoning it, or the conditional rezoning would not take it to the Van Dyke mixed-use district. It would simply take it to a C3 district with the conditions of the site plan and the other conditions imposed by the applicant.
And looking at the report from the Planning Commission, there were some concerns with the site. Have those all been ironed out, at least, about screening and trees and parking spaces, it looks like?
Yes, so as they moved into the Planning Commission, they provided revised plans. And again, this is only at the conditional rezoning stage. And so, as we noted earlier with the tree preservation and things, as they move into actual site plan review, should they be successful here, the rest of the site would be buttoned up and be obviously in full compliance with all of our ordinances, in terms of landscaping, architecture, parking spaces, all those kinds of things, yeah.
And to give credit to Mr. Jefferson, I had not thought of this, but are other cities moving to mandate electrical charging stations at hotels and things like that? And if so, is Sterling Heights going to go in that direction? I've never thought of that concept before, but it makes even more sense now.
No, I think that would be a good direction for us to ultimately go. And I think typically what a city will do is do a ratio of electrical spaces versus normal spaces, much like we mandated bicycle parking or bike rack requirements. I could foresee us very easily doing something very similar to say, for X number of regular parking spaces, a certain number of that will be electrical or charging. We don't have that requirement now, but that is, we can definitely, as administration, look into and potentially bring something forward.
So I think it's a good point. We're the Motor City, and we're going to be developing new electric cars, and we have Ford and Chrysler here, or Stellantis now, I guess, here. And I think that we should lead the way on that type of thing. I have to say, that's all I have from you, Mr. McLeod. Mr. Duncan, I really enjoyed your presentation. It swung me on this. I was probably going to vote no, because I'm concerned about your price point. But the way you explained it and the idea that this is more of a weekly for auto workers and the type, that swings me in the opposite direction, because the one thing I do not want to see in Sterling Heights is a budget hotel that attracts an element that I would not like to see in our community. But it seems to me that you guys are running a good operation. I would like the McAllisters to be on the street, but the world's not perfect. I'm excited to try their food, I guess, and see it, and I wish you luck. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. Duncan, You did a very good job explaining the suites. Now, I understand they're basically self-contained. It's either going to be 1 or 2 occupancy. You get your stove, your refrigerator, and so on. But looking at your drawing here, the first floor includes a fitness room. You have your lobby up front, your vestibule, your lobby, and then behind that you have your elevators and you have a fitness room and laundry room for the staff to do the laundry. Who is the fitness room for? Is that for the occupants? Do you offer anything else for them outside of their rooms?
Yes, ma'am. The fitness room is for the occupants. We also have a guest laundry facility as well as the staff laundry facility, so all the guest laundry can be done on site in the hotel.
Okay, so they can come down and use the laundry facilities there. In regard to the restaurant, what is the capacity of the restaurant? You explained the drive-through very well, but looking at the drawing again, it looks very nice. Can you explain a little more there?
Yes. So the restaurant seats 92 people inside and 16 outside on the patio seating. Flip back to that just. So there's the patio seating out front. They have more of a walk-up style. You walk up, you order, you take your number and go take a seat. The restaurant employees will bring you your meal or call your number and you can come up to the counter and pick it up and take your seat again. There are each typical shift's 15 employees, 2 shifts per day. Their total new job impact is about 40 to 50 people. And like I said, the drive-through menu board is not a typical drive-up. You speak your order into the menu. There's no speaker on there. It's simply a touch, say I'm here, from ordering ahead and go around to pick it up.
When we can have sit-down dinners again, what is the inside capacity as far as how many tables or how many people can you serve?
95 seats inside.
95
Or,
inside.
sorry, 92.
92. Looks like a very nice project, and from your presentation, it will be well used. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Yanes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. Duncan, you're in the hot seat. Your partner has bailed on you. You have to take all the heat. But one thing I did want to ask in regards to, in your presentation, you noted the job creation. There were 300 jobs, contractor jobs. Are those going to be local jobs, or do you have a general contractor that travels around the country and helps build these buildings?
The general contractor is, I mean, they're a handful of jobs and they don't always come from the local area. However, a lot of the subcontractor employment is from local employees. The majority of those, even the ones we did in Farmington Hills and Madison Heights, I would say that roughly 80% of the contractors were probably from within a 20-mile radius of each job.
Okay, so it really is true job creation then for the local economy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And that's all the questions. I will say, Mr. Mayor, I do appreciate the conversation that we're having in regards to electrical charging stations, and I do think that that's something that we really need to address, help the city helping to create that infrastructure. But I've got a feeling that market demand is going to determine when you start putting these things in. Because I know if I drive an electric vehicle and I'm going somewhere out of town, my choice of hotel is going to be who can charge my car, right? So, but it's a great thing to bring up, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Through the chair to Mr. Duncan. Don't go anywhere, Mr. Duncan. Most of my questions actually were answered, so I do have just a couple of questions and then some comments. So I do want to know, I see you've mentioned that it's 300 contractors will be on site to help construct this, or that's what it would approximately take. But how many actual employees would be needed to run for the hotel? You did already mention McAllister's, but for the hotel, what is their full complement? Once they're primarily full, how many employees would they be able to use?
So the hotel runs about 8 full-time equivalent employees, which translates to 14, 15 employees that are partially part-time and the rest are full-time.
Okay, very good. So that's some, not a ton, but then it's, of course, it's a hotel. You don't need a lot of people standing around you when you're in a hotel. So that makes perfect sense. And then you did mention that there's a weekly rate for the extended stay. Is there an actual monthly rate as well, so that even brings it down a bit more?
There is, and that is one of the ways that that's one of the ways we try to bring people in, especially initially, is getting that monthly rate out there to make it competitive with other, whether it's Class B apartments.
Right, yes, I've traveled for work, and I've had to stay at extended care, actually it was Comfort Suites most of the time with my employer. But we did always use the suites, it's very nice, but we have a couple of my own current employees that are coming in for months, and they're staying, and I work in Troy, so they're staying closer to that area, but a monthly fee would be an excellent opportunity for them, so I appreciate that. It did say something that really caught my eye in your presentation. You mentioned university endowments. Tell me a little bit about that, please.
Yes, ma'am. So one of our investment partners they are a large fund that has different pensions that I can't name names, but there are,
Okay.
Big auto company pension funds, they're university endowment funds. These are the people that are behind our products, our projects, and I guess I would throw that out there to say is that nothing nefarious or anything like that would happen on a watch with, folks behind us like that.
Okay, I didn't even consider that, actually. I was just curious about what that was all about. But that's good to know. So I happen to agree. I think this is a great use. It's much more desirable use of the site. I think the way you've presented it to us for both the multiple opportunities. At the synergy, I really do like with the other developments in the area. The location will be great and to be great use with FCA and SHAP because we have not just for the auto workers, we have all sorts of clientele that come through from different presentations. I assume, let me just ask, that you have conference rooms in the hotel as well? You have conference rooms that you can rent out?
No conference rooms here.
No conference rooms. You may want to consider that in another building, because that does help with facilities sometimes, just my thoughts. The surgical center also is a nurse myself. I know that there will be great use from the surgical center, people dropping off, family members that aren't going to be going anywhere, they'll be able to go to the restaurant. If the patients have to stay for any length of time, they can spend the night while the patients either early morning or late afternoon surgery. So I think this is a very interesting and very good use of that property with a lot of thought to it. So thank you. I think that I'm definitely voting for this, and I'm glad to see, I'll be happy to see it go up. It's not too far from my house, so it'll be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sarowski, and thank you, Mr. Duncan. I think you've won over a number of supporters on the council with your presentation tonight, and I don't think it was just your southern drawl. It was very well done. Appreciate all that information. It is Van Dyke is a corridor that certainly has seen its share of great commercial developments over these past few years, and so it's good to see another hotel and another unique food operation coming in. We're excited for that. I know I am. With your hotels, I mean, is there anything stopping you from putting in electric charging stations if you thought that it was something that your guests would benefit from?
No. I think that a lot of it is
Got to
going
make
to
that
be
corporate decision.
a cost-benefit ratio. I mean, electric charging stations are still new, and they're not inexpensive, and
Yeah, I mean, my feeling on it is that the market really, as Mr. Yen has said, is that the market knows where it is, right? And I don't really think it's time for us to be saying when electric vehicles are about 2 to 3% of the market right now, certainly they're growing, and there's every reason to believe that by 2035 or by 2050, they're going to be a third or half of the market. But right now, I would hesitate to mandate to you that you build, these charging stations, which can run from anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 up to $30,000 to $40,000, just to sit there. So I'm sure when that time comes, the hotels and the restaurants and the grocery stores and all those users will find that attractive to them and put them in. And I'm not so sure that the city needs to be mandating that. But I appreciate your presentation. I'm certainly going to vote yes. I'm looking forward to seeing these products come to the city of Sterling Heights. I thank you. Thank you, Mr. McLeod, for your presentation. So, council, without any further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will be back in 2 weeks. Moving on, next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Gonski.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is a consideration item, and this is to consider a request by Portillo's Hot Dogs LLC for a new tavern license with Sunday sales AM permit at 14425 Lakeside Circle, Sterling Heights, Michigan, 48313. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Come on up.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Steve Grobel. I am the liquor licensing attorney for Portillo's. With me this evening is Eric East. Eric is the general manager of the new Portillo's. We're here this evening seeking approval of two things from you. First, the approval of a tavern license, which would allow us to serve beer and wine only, and also your approval for us to use one of the city's available quota licenses. This is Portillo's first restaurant in Michigan. We currently operate over 60 restaurants in 6 different states. We're famous for our Italian beef sandwiches and Chicago-style hot dogs and our chocolate cake. Our grand opening is presently scheduled for March the 16th, and we are very excited about coming to Michigan and coming to Sterling Heights. We're looking to employ approximately 120 people when we're up and running. And I am available, or particularly Eric, who's got certainly much more knowledge on the operational side and some of the specifics. We're happy to answer any questions you may have tonight.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Grobel. We will, like we did with the last item, go to the audience, and then if council has any questions, we will call you back up. All right? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Zarko.
Resolve that the request for the issuance of a new tavern license with Sunday sales AM permit located at 14425 Lakeside Circle, Sterling Heights, Michigan, 48313, Macomb County, to Portillo's Hot Dog LLC be considered for approval.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Zarko?
Well, I don't have any questions. I do have a few comments. Well, maybe I should ask questions. Through the chair to, is it Mr. East, Eric East?
Manager.
Good evening.
Could you explain the training that your employees will have to serve alcohol?
They go through they'll be certified through the alcohol classes through the state in order to be able to pour. They'll be 18 in order to ring it up and to serve it. Everybody that will be in that station will have certification, and then every manager that would be in the restaurant will also be certified.
Will you be an active manager at that site?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you'll be on site, I would think, most of the time then as an active manager.
A whole lot of the time.
Okay. And I'm sure, could you tell us a little bit more about, first of all, the number of employees that you think you're going to have there again, and the seating capacity, and give us some more information about the restaurant, the drive-through? There are so many people that have either visited Chicago or are transplanted here from the Chicago area that are looking forward to this. So if you could, tell the rest of the residents in Sterling Heights what you're all about, that we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're looking to have 120 to 130 employees. Capacity right now is 180 when we open up the inside. That doesn't include what we put through and drive. Typically, a Portillo's is about 45 to 50% revenue through drive, 15 to 20% through catering, online ordering, delivery, and then the remainder would be dine-in guests. Our opportunity to introduce the brand to this market is not taken lightly. We're very, very excited to bring to Michigan. I am from Michigan, born and raised, so there's a definite soft spot for me and a big sense of pride to show this area, and then also provide everybody who is aware of it and certainly craving it, what they're looking for. So the way that the process works, you walk into the restaurant if you come in, or you go through the drive. We have order takers outside with handheld devices that will approach your car, and at a reasonable distance at this time, they'll take your order. They'll receive payment. You'll continue in line. When your food is complete, we'll have an employee that will run the food to your car and give it to you prior to you getting to the window. So our goal is to be able to take your order, get it back to you before you actually get to where the window is. We do hand out at the window as well, but we try to provide a higher level of urgency than a typical fast food. We don't consider ourselves fast food, although we perform that type of service.
Okay. I'm familiar with Taste of Chicago, and Portillo's is one of the vendors. Is that something that, say if somebody from, usually you order and they ship from there, is that something that you get involved in at all, as far as that maybe you would be doing some of the shipping or whatever from your site, or is that strictly through corporate?
Yeah, that is strictly through corporate. We don't ship anything out of the restaurant. We can do everything that's available for pickup or delivery. So the food, we do have opportunity to get some of our product cold, and the guest can heat it up, serve it at their convenience. We provide directions on how to do that. We provide heating kits and utensils and the tools necessary to be able to replicate our product that you would get inside the restaurant or through drive-through.
Okay. First of all, I appreciate your time today. I think there's a lot of people that are looking forward to Portillo's, especially our city manager. And, we're always hesitant to give away some of our quota licenses, but the fact that this is one of the places or the areas that we've chosen to save those licenses for, and you're just lucky enough to get one. So I wish you a lot of luck. I know that you have a couple of events coming up in the next few weeks, so we look forward to seeing you. And if there's anything more that we can do for you, let us know.
Well, I greatly appreciate your appreciation and consideration, and us, Portillo's and the city, I believe we'll have a great relationship moving forward.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Sarko. Mrs. Sarowski.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor. Through the chair to Mr. Grobel, please, if I could, please. Just have a couple of questions, not too many. Oh, thank you. So through the chair to you, how many other restaurants does Portillo's own?
The number is 62, I believe.
And could you tell us where they're primarily located?
Mainly Illinois. I think 40 are in Illinois. The other 20 are in Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota. I think there's 1 or 2 in Southern California and 1 or 2 in Arizona.
We had to hit that west just for flair. So, but mostly Midwest, so that sounds always nice to me. These are all corporate owned, or are any of those franchised?
I believe they're all corporate owned. Yeah, I don't believe they operate on a franchise system.
Okay, very good. Just some curious questions that I had. So other than that, I really don't have, do you have, well, I do want to ask a couple, I take that back. So with, as far as your tavern license, are you looking to have more of a craft beer? Do you have your own specific brew brands that you like to use?
No, it's a fairly small selection. Alcohol for Portillo's is generally less than 1% of revenue, so it is not it's not a big factor in not something that they really promote. They have available. They're more of a family type brand, but if dad wants to have a beer when he comes, they do like to have it available. So, and I'm sorry, I had my list, and I don't know that I have it in front of me. I think they have 4 beers. They like to have 1 or 2 local craft beers. They have a, Eric, they have like a Bud Light.
So traditional brands, traditional.
Shorts, I know they're bringing from up in Bel Air. And then they have a smaller wine selection too, with just a couple of different types of wine that are available. So it's not the concentration isn't about the alcohol at Portillo's.
Okay, very good. Although that's why you're here in front of us today, so
Yeah,
that's why
absolutely.
that's our focus
We
tonight.
certainly need your blessing and your approval, and that of the MLCC also, so.
Right, and I'm glad that they've also given that. So, and I have no other further questions, so thank you. I am very excited to have this, another opportunity for something different in our city, which is something we like to try to differentiate ourselves with, so I think that'll be great. I know, as Ms. Ziarko's mentioned, a certain gentleman over there is quite excited about this, so we will be happy to accommodate that. So, other than that, thank you, Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Zarowski. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. East, first of all, I have a 24-year-old son at home that is just drooling that you guys are coming to Sterling Heights. So that being said, I'm perplexed by your drive-through system. So are you saying that it's all credit card, or at what point can you pay cash?
At any time. We take cards, gift cards, and cash.
So if you get your food before you pay, then you still stop at the window?
I apologize, I'll explain that a little bit clearer.
Okay.
So when you place your order with our outside order takers, you also will pay them at that time.
Oh, okay.
So that transaction is handled initially, and then as you progress through the line, we'll run your food out to you, but you've already paid at that point once you receive your food.
Okay, okay. And then the only other question I have is your beer and wine will strictly be for eating in patrons, or will it be available through the drive-through as well?
It is not available through the drive-through.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm very excited in our house. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited for Portillo's to come to Sterling Heights, but I am against this liquor license transfer. You tell me that 25% of your sales are inside your thing, and you make 1% of your revenue from alcohol. To me, giving you an escrowed license is almost a waste of a license, because it's not your primary purpose. You don't seem to be spending money on it. I like your investment, and I'm very supportive. I'm excited to try your products, but I think that these licenses are few and far between, and we need to hold on to them for projects that would fully utilize them. So I support you, but I'm going to have to vote against this transfer. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Mrs. Koski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one question in regard to the alcohol. It is ordered when the order is placed, but our backup says there is no food or alcohol service at dining tables. And I'm assuming that that is because of no indoor dining right now. And there was one comment made that the person would pick up their alcohol at the bar. It would not be served to them. I'm confused there. Would you please go through that? How do I get a beer?
Yes, ma'am. When you, if you're dining inside, you will go in, you will place your order. Your menu board, digital menu board is in front of you. Choose what you'd like, including beverages. You would pay for everything right there. We give you a receipt with a number on it. You will slide down to another area of the restaurant. If you are also purchasing or have purchased a beer, that is served in a whole separate area from where the food comes out. As you're waiting for your food, when your number is called, you will collect your food, everything except for your condiments, and you will go and seat yourself at a table, available table. So there are no servers that bring you or serve the product in that sense there. The last part of, you have the ability to go to the area that serves the beer and purchase the beer at that location, pay for it, and not go through the other line and stand in line where everybody else is ordering food as well. So there's two separate places, but you do serve yourself, you do seat yourself.
So I can take my food and then go to the bar and purchase the beer separately at the bar?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And that's where you would check ID or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. East. So I think we heard there are about 62 Portillos nationwide, mostly in Illinois and the Midwest. Do all of them have liquor licenses, or are some of them, do you know, you're nodding your head, do you want to come up here?
Mr. Grable.
I believe that, I think the number is 60 of the 62, at least 60 of the 62. I don't know if all of them do, but I know at least 60 of the 62 do. So they're virtually all licensed, the same tavern, it's beer and wine.
Okay, so I'm trying, I have some of the same concerns as Mr. Radke. Be honest, there's a lot to like here. And generally, when we're talking about giving out our quota licenses, we've done, since I've been on the council, which is going on 12 years now, I think this would be the third one. One didn't work out for us, one did, and I'm sure this one would. I have no doubt that this is going to be a fantastic restaurant, and it's going to do very well in this market. The intersection of Hall and Shaner is, right across the street from you, there are people that wait like 2 or 3 hours for Chick-fil-A. I don't understand. I've never had it, and at this rate, I never will. But I think it's phenomenal. We've had a new Krispy Kreme go in right there. We've got the Chick-fil-A. We've got a First Watch, a BJ's Brew House, and now this, and we're excited for another concept coming right at Hall and Shaner coming soon. So I think this is going to be great. I'm inclined to vote yes. It seems to me that beer and wine are part of the experience that you want to provide. Obviously, if 90% of 95+% of your restaurants have it, but I also understand you don't want to go on the open market and spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for this. So can you just sort of give me a flavor for, how important is it to your overall dining experience to have the alcohol, the beer and wine component?
Well, I think by the fact that virtually all of our restaurants have them is an indication of just how important it is to the brand. It is, in talking to the folks at Portillo's about this, they indicated to me that it is that their experience and their customer reaction to their menu is what has led them to seek these liquor licenses. They have found that that their customer base, maybe not everybody, but enough of them want the opportunity to have a beer or a glass of wine so that they can serve everybody. Like I said, if the kids are dragging dad to Portillo's, dad can have a beer when he's there. Or if mom is not a beer drinker, mom can have a glass of wine. But it is they have found in the course of, developing these 60 restaurants that having alcohol, or at least, having it available to their customers is something that's important to them and important enough that they seek it in every restaurant that they open. So, I mean, it's a long way of saying it's very important to them.
Understood. Okay. Do you serve old style? Is that what it's called, Mr. Vanderpool? I can't see.
Croissant old style from,
Yeah.
I don't believe they do. I think.
Okay, good.
I know they do in the Chicago
I
area.
was going to vote no. Mr. East, would you agree with me that Chicago is a very lousy sports town as a Michigander? We're giving up Mr. Vanderpool this love over here. I'm not going to let him get away with that. Look, I think it's great. I'm really excited to have the first Portillo's store in Michigan opening up here in the city of Sterling Heights. Does Portillo's have plans? I don't know if you can speak to it. Do they have plans to expand in the Michigan market and the Metro Detroit region?
I don't know about Metro Detroit, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of school and talking with Mr. East this morning. I understand that there is some other plans to open up in other areas of Michigan. I'm in Royal Oak. I'm very much lobbying for something west of Woodward, but to no avail, at least as of yet. But yes, there is some other Portillo's coming in at some point, although I've not heard anything about additional Metro Detroit. So.
Well, this is a great new restaurant, a great new addition to the Sterling Heights area. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to support this, and I'm going to vote yes on this tonight. And I wish you guys both very good luck and a lot of success. I think you're going to. Do you have a few more? Okay. I'm getting cut off. Sorry. Mrs. Koski, go ahead.
Me too. Just have one other question. You have no waitresses serving the tables. I'm assuming that you also have children there. How are you going to prevent a child from sipping on daddy's beer?
Well, I think that's more mom and dad's issue. Certainly our staff is, as Eric mentioned, is all safe serve trained. So they know about serving underage. They know about serving intoxicated folks. So the people who are out and they're cleaning up, obviously if they see something like that, they'd know enough to report that to a supervisor who could take the appropriate steps. But something like that scenario, I would hope mom and dad would have enough sense to sort of police themselves there.
So you're relying on the parents to monitor anyone underage drinking in the restaurant?
Well, certainly to the extent, once we've provided the alcohol to mom or dad, we're sort of hoping that mom and dad have the good sense to act and drink responsibly. So certainly, if we were to see, some minor tipping back a beer, we're going to, have a manager or somebody, contact the parents and make sure that they put a stop to that. But I don't know that we would actively sort of police that situation.
Okay, so your employees are trained to verify age. Have you ever been fined?
Have they ever received a violation?
Yes.
You know, I don't know the answer to that in terms of all of the 62. I know they take the responsibilities very seriously. I know that they view a liquor license as a privilege and not a right. And I know that corporate-wide, that they view their responsibility very strictly. And like I said, everyone will be properly server trained. I would have to get back to you to let you know. Because this is the first in Michigan, this is my first contact with the nice folks at Portillo's. So I'm not, unfortunately, as intimately acquainted with their other 62 restaurants.
Yeah, well, you have to understand, we treat our liquor licenses like they were gold.
Understand.
And when you get down to 5, 6 licenses, you want to make sure that whoever it goes to is really necessary and they're going to treat it properly.
Oh, I can guarantee you, Councilwoman, that Portillo's takes this opportunity, and they're very grateful for the opportunity. And two, you know, they have made a significant investment in this site and in the city of Sterling Heights, to the tune of approximately $4.8 million. So they are, you know, determined to succeed. They are determined to do this right. And this is a good company, a good, solid operation. They do things right. And I have no qualms in telling you that I fully expect that to be the case here. I think you will be very happy and very proud of Portillo's. They're going to be a good corporate citizen. And I do think that, certainly that giving up one of your quota licenses, which we understand the value of. Trust me, I understand that. I do liquor licensing for a living. I appreciate that. It won't be wasted here. I can tell you that.
Well, we have a prior Michigander that's going to run this operation, and he's going to promise us that there's not going to be any children sipping on daddy's beer, right?
That's correct, Councilwoman. This will add the level of oversight that we provide throughout the day with our leadership. It includes coverage of the area, the dining areas on a regular basis. We're in a rotation. And so it's not just our employees and our key employees that are involved in our guest interaction and our guest experience. Our leadership team is also keenly involved in not just watching for the service of alcohol and proper consumption, but guest service in general, cleanliness, sanitation, organization, how things are running. So there's a tremendous amount of oversight and attention paid to every aspect of where the restaurant, of what's going on inside the restaurant.
Well, I'm not familiar with your restaurant, so that's why I was asking the questions. And it just seemed like you place your order, and then you go pick up your order, and then you go find a place to sit down. And my concern, as you said, is the management team being available throughout the dining facility so that they can keep an eye on the little children that, I don't want to call them little children, sometimes they're 14, 15 years old, they want to say, oh, Daddy, can I have a taste of that? That's my concern, and that's why I asked the questions. And I understand that you're going to be extremely successful, so I know you're going to be very busy, so I'm relying on you to make that trip around the room.
Well, as does my corporation, who has the need to maintain that $4.8 million operation. And that's, you know, a commitment that myself and my management team relish. And we look forward to it. And we support the brand in a way that, not just with that, but just providing the level of quality. There's a reason why our city manager has the emotional attachment to leaves a lasting impression in you, and we take that very seriously.
Like we said, we expect the cars to be lined up on both sides of the street between you and Chick-fil-A.
Mrs.
Okay.
Zarko.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, part of my question, through the chair to, Mr. Grobel mentioned the investment that was already made. Do you want to repeat those numbers?
Can, Chairwoman.
The investment that's already there?
The numbers I have from Portillo's, building construction, $3,744,000 and change, FF&E, so furniture, fixtures, and equipment, $1,001,000 and change, in inventory approximately 43,000. So 4.8 plus in change so far.
Okay, and the reason why I say that is my colleagues, both our Mayor Taylor brought up the fact that we don't do this very often, and we do have a liquor license that's out there that probably was granted because somebody just gave us the wrong information on their financing. So for 10 years, we've had a liquor license that's never been used because the project's not completed. Here we have a company that's invested $418 million. What was it,
4.8 plus.
4.8 plus million, and we know that they've already made an investment in the community, and they want to be successful, and we should probably consider, everything we can to make you successful. So I certainly appreciate it, and there was one other, I think that's it. But yes, I think that it's the investments there. Oh, through the chair to our attorney, Mr. Koszewski. Mr. Koszewski, we have now, because of the liquor license that's been hanging out there for 10 years that was never used, we put a clause in there that if something were to happen to this facility, this company, within the next 5 years, we get the license back. Through the chair to Mr. Koszewski, is that still a fact in this particular license?
Mr. Koszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilwoman Zierko, there are provisions that if the business were to go away within 5 years, that the liquor license would be returned back to the city as part of our quota. So we have that standard provision that we've put in that agreement, yes.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zarko. Mr. Radke.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify one point. I am totally for you folks having a liquor license. I am against using one of our quota licenses to do it. I understand you've made a significant investment, and I appreciate that, but we're trying to improve the entire dining scene in Sterling Heights, and one thing we don't have is a lot of high-class restaurants or restaurants that attract a business lunch crowd, and I think these licenses could be gold for that. And I think you're going to do well no matter what, and I think you can afford the $45,000, $50,000 for a license, so I don't see the efficacy in granting you one. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Just to, for my own sake, I've been to several Portillos, probably 3 or 4 different Portillos in the Chicagoland area, and for my colleague, Ms. Koski, it's sort of like, it's I don't want to compare it to Fuddruckers, but it's similar in the sense that you walk up, you order, and then you leave the ordering area, you get your food, you go, you sit down. Look, I've got 3 little kids. I mean, they're not going to drink my beer because they're not, first of all. And, I'd go whack them away even if they tried. And they'd be grounded in their room and they wouldn't have Xbox for like 3 weeks. And so, I mean, it would be a very costly sip for my 9-year-old. And my 11-year-old would have her phone taken away. I mean, I don't see that as a very big problem. When you're 14 or 15 years old and you're trying to get a buzz, you're not going to Portillo's. I don't think that's this is a great, like you said, it's really a family restaurant. It's you get the sense that they're protective of their brand. It's a very unique dining experience. It's an interesting place to be inside of. It's an experience that you're not going to forget when you go in there. It's a really, cool place. It's something that, it's sort of coming full circle for us because when the city manager and I had an opportunity to visit with the former owners of Lakeside Mall back in, I think this was 2015, we drove out there and we pitched some plans, some ideas for the former owner of Lakeside Mall. we stopped at Portillo's on the way and had lunch there and sort of collected our thoughts before meeting with them. And then, for 6 years later, to have Portillo's coming to Lakeside Mall, to have new Lakeside Mall owners that are really ambitious about what they want to do there, it's an exciting time, and it sort of shows that we've got a lot of great things going on here. And so I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be great. I too think it's, I don't want to quibble over the liquor license, but this is a significant investment. And what we said before was that we were going to save these for really significant projects, significant investments in our community, and I think this is one that fits the bill. So I'm going to vote yes, and I think everybody's had an opportunity to speak. So without any further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
6 ayes, 1 no. Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck. We will be seeing you very soon. All right? Thank you.
Very much.
Yep, appreciate your presentations tonight.
Look forward to seeing you. Try the Italian beef. It's awesome.
I do too. All right, we will move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is to consider appointments to the Sterling Heights Community Alliance. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, what we have here is, so this is a new board, obviously, that was just very recently created. We have 7 vacancies, but there are 3 different term ending dates. So it has to be staggered so that they're not all coming up at the same time. We have 2 with a term ending June 30, 2022, 3 June 30, 2022, 2023, and 2024. 2, 3, 2 respectively. These are city council appointments, and there were a number of applicants that applied, about 40 or so applicants, and I had it was a pleasure reading through the applicants and reading through their statements and what they had to say. And although, we're only going to nominate or appoint 7 tonight, it was great to see all of the interest and support in this board. So with that statement, I would open it up to anyone on the council who would like to make an appointment.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
how do we want to do this?
Well, what we can do is, I guess, leave it up to the council members. So
3
we're gonna-
badges, I think.
How about if I do 2 for the 22?
That would be great.
Is that good? Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Resolve to appoint Sarah Ito and Ricardo Harris to the Community Alliance Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2022, subject to the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Sure, Mayor Taylor. I actually have the pleasure of knowing Sarah Ito. She is a phenomenal young lady who grew up in the city of Sterling Heights, who reached out to me because she is a Down syndrome resident who has become a huge advocate for that community. And she is very passionate. I know her from going to high school with my son at Sterling Heights High School. She was a member of the marching band. She is just a phenomenal young lady and is really passionate about this. So I'm excited to have her on board, and can't wait to see what this whole commission is going to do. So I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Council, anyone else? With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for those 2 appointments. Is there anyone else who'd like to make one or multiple appointments to the June 30, 2023 ending date?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke.
Resolve to appoint Stacy Bowery, Leah Mitchell, and Nakia Powell-Thomas to the Community Alliance Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2023, so as the appointees meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subsection 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Radke.
Yes, I was very impressed by the packets provided by the Community Relations Department. I think all these appointees will do a wonderful job. I know Stacy personally. She's very active in our community and works for the Chaldean Community Foundation. I think she'll be, I think all these people will be an essential part of the board, and I look forward to working with them.
I agree, Mr. Radke. Thank you. Anyone else, council? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That leaves 2 remaining appointments to terms ending June 30, 2024.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
I am only going to take one of these, but I resolve to appoint Pidat Mantinen to the Community Alliance Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2024, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subset 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
All right, I will support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes, I happen to have known Pat for 30 years. She is one of my co-workers at Beaumont Home Care. She is a nurse. She is from Spain. She has multiple points of view that are going to be very interesting, both as a, probably she's going to yell at me about this, but she's a senior, and she's also a really feisty, brilliant, fascinating single mom nurse who has lived in Sterling Heights for all the time that I've known her, and I'm very excited to see that she's interested in this board. She will bring great ideas, and I'm very happy to appoint her, or to nominate her.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarowski. Anyone else, council? I'm going to ask Mrs. Davis, if you wouldn't mind coming up. And just so I'm clear, Ms. Sarowski, this is Pidat Mantinen?
Correct.
Okay. This was not, while, like I said, I thought all of the applicants had interesting things to say and were certainly deserving of a position. The city administration went through and has some recommendations. And could you speak to why certain individuals were recommended and why others were not?
Well, in general or specific?
Well, just generally. I don't want you to, I don't want, if I need to, I'll ask why wasn't this candidate recommended? But at this time, I sort of more would like to know, so was the administration trying to create a good blend of individuals, people with complementary talents, people from differing backgrounds, and could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, yes, absolutely. And that's what we were trying to do. We were looking to create a group that was made up of individuals that had either or all of the following. They either had special training through their job or their education that lent itself to this type of commission where they could speak on issues of diversity and inclusion and unification of the community, or that their job provided them resources that would be helpful to this group, and or they also exhibited a tremendous amount of passion for and commitment to the mission and goals of this group, and or they had actual experience as a member of a group that this commission would be addressing. For example, Sarah Ito, she is a person that is a Down syndrome adult that lives in the city. She can speak from personal experience what it's like to be a person with a disability that lives in our community and advocate for that community. So those were some of the things in general that we were looking to make sure that we included.
Okay. I appreciate it. Looking at our, where did it go? Bear with me here. So, looking at our list, we have appointed so far Stacy Bari, Ricardo Harris, Sarah Ito, Leah Mitchell, and Nakia Powell-Thomas. Is that right? Okay. I was really, I really did want to appoint Tim Doppel and Takrita Graffenreid to this commission as well. And so I seconded the motion to give an opportunity, but I think I'm going to vote no. And the reason being, I'd like those two candidates, Tim and Takrita, to get the appointment. So that's all I have to say. Anyone else on council have any discussion? So can we have a roll call vote? Ms. Riska?
Mr. Yanez?
Yes.
Mrs. Yarko?
No.
Mrs. Kosky?
Yes.
Mr. Radke?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
No. Motion carries 5-2. So we have one more appointment to make.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
Resolve to appoint Tim Doppel, where am I at? To the Community Alliance Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2024, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion?
I worked for Tim before he retired, and I retired, so he is familiar with the operations of the city, because he certainly asks a lot of questions of me, and also he's been interactive with city administrations for concerns that he has in his neighborhood. So I know he knows what's going on. So I think he'll do a good job.
Okay, council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion.
No.
No? Okay. 6 votes yes, 1 vote no. Motion carries. And that is our community alliance. We are very proud of this and excited to see the good work that this new commission is going to do. And so I can't wait to see what comes out of it. Next item on our agenda is to consider, too many things open on this thing.
Board of Review.
This is to consider nomination to the City of Sterling Heights Board of Review. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, council, this is one opening that keeps coming back.
No
Mayor
one wants the
Taylor.
job.
Is there anyone who'd like to make a nomination? Mrs. Schmidt.
First, I'd like to acknowledge and accept the withdrawal of nominee Laura Robinson from consideration for appointment to the Board of Review and nominate Mark Magny for consideration as an appointee to the Board of Review at the March 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Just that Ms. Robinson is moving out of the city, and so she asked to be withdrawn from the nominee, and Mr. Magny is up for the nomination.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that concludes that portion of our agenda, and we'll move on to communications from citizens. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda? Mr. Jefferson.
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. Mr. Vanderpool, a couple questions to the novices out there. Could you explain what Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the snow removal is about? Also, is there any plans on getting a COVID shot test area to the south of the city for the 15-mile road, so we could break this up, so we could have people up in the north end getting them, as well as people in the south end, so we can have a quicker process to this. I want to say this. thought Mayor Taylor was going to say it, but he didn't say it. He kind of went around it. But that diversity thing, that was 5 women, 2 men. And until you said something, it was 5-1. I don't know how diverse that is, but so be it, so be it. Is there any plan, since it's getting to be cold outside, it's going to be real cold, using this area maybe for the less fortunate in this community? And does anyone know if there is a area in the city where someone may know someone that's a little less fortunate than us, where they can go, and can that be put up into the on the website or text out to people or Facebook page where individuals may be able to take someone or something like that? I met a young lady the other day. Her name was Adriana. And I so happened to just give her some money. And I was like, well, go and, go get warm. And she was like, I had no place to go. So I wound up taking her and putting her in one of the hotels around here because she was out on the street begging for money. I can't do that for everyone, but it was cold that day. And she had already been out there 6 hours. So that's why I'm asking, can this be used as a place like this, like that? If not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else? Not, close that portion and move on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool. And since Mr. Jefferson brought it up, perhaps you could give just an update on snow removal and where we are and when we expect to get through it. And I know there's forecast for snow on Thursday again, and how might that impact our snow removal efforts right now?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Be happy to respond to the question regarding the map that's in place and why Phase 1 is different than Phase 2. First, we're using Map A during this snow emergency. We rotate the maps each snow emergency, so the community's divided into 2 phases. So depending on which map we're using determines which phase you're in. So for example, if you look at the map on our website right now, Map A, Phase 1 is all the green areas. So the green areas are being done first. You were, the plows started this morning around 9 o'clock. They'll finish up with Phase 1 early tomorrow morning, and then they'll start Phase 2. The next snow emergency, hopefully it's not this week or next week, and maybe not all the rest of the winter, but if we have another one, the phases will then flip. So that way it's, everyone gets a chance of being plowed first. So that's why we have the rotational schedule with the map, so you can go online and look at that. Again, we plan to be through Phase 1 tomorrow morning, Phase 2 early Thursday morning. So we will have completed the snow emergency in the neighborhoods, all snow removal within the 48 hours, more than likely closer to 36 hours, which is the goal that we set every time we have a snow emergency. Once we're done with the snow emergency, then we'll focus on the sidewalks. But the community will be in very good shape in short order, and we'll be ready for the next snow removal. Unfortunately, it looks like we will get a little more later on in the week, but nothing like, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything like this one. So we're working around the clock, 16-hour shifts. We have 35 pieces of snow removal equipment out on the roads, including the larger plow trucks, single axle, double axle, and then also a full fleet of pickup trucks that are in the cul-de-sacs and in more tight areas of our neighborhood. So all in all, things are going very smooth right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Koszubski, anything tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
All right, I'll open it up to the city council. Any reports, new business? Mrs. Sarowski.
I'll start. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So just wanted to thank the residents and remind them that, as I know everybody's still glued to the TV about COVID and the COVID numbers, they are coming down. I would encourage everyone to please consider getting vaccinated. I know that there are concerns with anything new and anything different, and there are many different health concerns from those unknowns. But please, if you are able to, please consider getting vaccinated as soon as possible within the phases that we have to abide by. If you aren't going to do that, or if you're not able to, or not interested in it, then please remember to wear your mask, and please remember to socially distance. Please remember not to have large gatherings, to keep those that are vulnerable safe by not continuing the spread. And that's all. As a nurse, I believe in the science, I believe in the math, and I believe in making sure that we do our own part to take care of each other. So I ask you to please help me in this endeavor, and I thank you for everything that you are all continuing to do. Can't believe it's been a year. It's been the most crazy year in my lifetime, and for most of us as well. So I applaud everyone getting through as far as we have. I send my condolences to those who have lost family members and are continuing to fight that struggle. And I look forward to not having to wear the masks again. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roski. Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was thinking recently about our strategic planning session. You know, we discussed a lot at that meeting. It was a wonderful meeting. And one thing we discussed about was the election center and how we need basically more space. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind is Fillmore Elementary is available. They are willing, the district is supposedly willing to sell it to us for the right price. I think it could be a dual use, both as an election center and or a recreational facility, a southern recreation center, and a park. And I think it's really in the city's best interest to really think about that property because it's there, it's available. If we don't buy it or take it, it'll be turned into homes, which I'm not against. But I think that we have space available. Our recreation department was there before. They liked it. And one thing that I think about a lot is that living in the southern part of the city, there aren't a lot of city facilities or parks available to the residents there. And I think this would be one more opportunity to really improve the system. So I'd urge the administration to really consider it. It would give us the space we need because right now we're kind of juggling. And I also think it would be a real benefit to the residents, especially on the south end, where most things, including Lakeside, are north of everyone. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Through the chair to Mr. Koszybski. So tonight we appointed to the new Community Alliance Commission. So there was a very good response to that. And if at some point we feel we want 9 members instead of 7, what is the procedure that we would do?
Mr. Koszybski.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Schmidt, that's a good question. What you would do is if 4 members of council so chose to give direction, or if the council in general gave direction to amend our ordinance to add positions, we would be able to do that at any time. It would just be a matter of somebody asking us to do that and direct the administration to move forward.
Okay. I'm not willing to do that right now. I think we need to let them see, let them get together and see how this all plays out. But we do always have the option of increasing that membership. And on a final note, if we could just get Mr. Bonner to get Lou Malnati's to come to Sterling Heights, Mr. Vanderpool would be complete. I have nothing further. Thank you.
It's no Jets Pizza. I mean, we've got Jets Pizza, so I'm not sure why we would need anything else, to be honest.
Can I just?
No, you don't have the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Vanderpool.
If we get a Lou Malnati's, I will really have no reason to go back home, and my mother would be very upset.
Well, it's good pizza, but it's different. It's not really pizza. It's more like, I'm not sure what it is.
Dough and sauce.
Yeah, it's not pizza. But anyway, Mr. Yanis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to say again how much I really appreciate not only the employees of the city, but the citizens who step up and sit on committees and commissions. The great work, my hats off to Chief Miller and his staff for the great work that they did, getting us towards an ISO 1, and the work that they've done on COVID, I think, is really remarkable in this amount of time, starting literally from nothing and getting us to a point where, we are in Sterling Heights, I think, a leader in the county as far as the work that they're doing. And then also Mr. McLeod and the Planning Commission and the Sustainability, or the Planning Division's Sustainability Commission, working on that tree ordinance. And it just goes to show why Sterling Heights is the kind of quality city that it is. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of thought, and a lot of dedication from a lot of people. So I just wanted to say that. In regards to the people who were ticketed for the snow emergency, I almost feel like this is deja vu. This came up again last year, and I think last year we probably wrote about 500 tickets in our biggest snow emergency last year. And what I brought up was, why are these people not taking their vehicles off the street? We have all this communication. We got the website. We've got text messages. We've got Facebook. We've got all this stuff. And why are folks not getting their cars off the street? I would like an answer to that because, one, I don't like to see anybody get a ticket. How much are the tickets, by the way?
25.
Through the chair, Mr. Vanderpool, do you know?
$25, right, Mr. Vanderpool? Yeah,
They're
$25.
relatively, so that makes it even worse because they're inexpensive, but it gets in the way of the guys who are trying to plow the street. And if we are missing something, if there's a reason that these folks are not getting their cars off the street because they're missing the message, we really need to find out why. And so it's not about the money, but it is about the process. And it seems that, I think if we look up record last year of how many tickets we wrote during the snow emergency, I think we're going to find that by the time this is over on Thursday, we'll probably have written about the same number of tickets. And you got to wonder, is it the same people or a number of the same people? So I would really encourage the city to, maybe, take a look, do a sample survey. We're about to embark on a huge citizen survey where we're going to pay a lot of money. If we're going to write 400 or 500 tickets, take a 10% sample, 40 people, 50 people, whatever, and contact them and ask them, why didn't you move your vehicle off the street? And if it's a matter of them not receiving a communication or what have you, then, maybe there's something else we should be doing. Again, it's not as much about the money, only $25, but it really is about the process and the guys who are out there and gals who are out there plowing our streets. So I just want to say that again this year, and hopefully next year's snow emergency, I'm not talking about this again, or at least we have an answer as to why people aren't getting their car off the street. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'm going to elaborate just a little bit more on what Mr. Yanez says about, parking on the street during a snow emergency. And today, a lot of my neighbors were out at the same time that I was, and my daughter was out there. I mean, every household had somebody out there. The person that didn't have anybody out there doing their snow was also the person that had the car in the street. So it was like, Stacy said to me, do you think I should go over there and tell, there were 2 cars, tell them that, it's a snow emergency, they'll get a ticket. One removed the car, put it in the driveway, and the other one moved it later in the day, but it took a while. But my concern isn't just I live on a court, and I'm at the end of the court. If somebody gets stuck in the middle of the court, we can't go anywhere. I mean, you just can't go anywhere. But the other thing is the emergency vehicles have to get to where they need to be. So that's why it's so important. And then there's times I think that, after your first offense, maybe your ticket should be a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if we have that through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool. Do we have that graduated? Do we have a scale where if it's a second or third offense that, we charge them more for that ticket?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Zarko, yes, we do. The second ticket is $100, the third $125. So in most cases, these are not habitual offenders. This is a very large city. We have 40,000 properties. If we issue 400 tickets, that means we have 99% compliance. The vast majority of residents are complying. To get to 100% perfect compliance probably just isn't realistic. There's always extenuating circumstances of one situation or another. In some cases, we've towed vehicles that haven't moved, so we enforce this. Most people know about it in the city. Maybe some newcomers don't, but as I mentioned earlier in my report, we never used to connect directly with 25,000 people with direct text messages and emails saying you have to remove your cars from the street, we're in a snow emergency. We do that now. In addition, our followers on Facebook are, as I mentioned earlier, over 50,000 people follow us on Facebook. That's a lot of touch points. The communication is better than it's ever been. And yet we still hover around this same number during every snow emergency. It's just, I think, almost impossible to get to 100%, but we're going to continue to enforce it. And the people who get tickets, typically, they're far more attentive in future emergencies.
Okay. And the next point I'd like to bring up is sidewalk, cleaning your sidewalk. Because of where I'm at, the front of my house is, say, 110 feet, and the one side of it's 189. Well, even though it's Shaner's on that west side of the house, I'm still responsible to clean that sidewalk. And I think we need to bring that to attention of other people that use those main streets and sidewalks to get from point A to point B. Because as Mr. Jefferson was saying, there's people that they are walking because they have no other means of transportation, even if it means walking from wherever they're at to a bus stop. So I think we need to concentrate, and I'm sure in our database, we could look into letting people know that they need to clean that other side that maybe isn't in the front of their house, but certainly you're responsible for doing that side of your house. We get into a routine in my neighborhood where if I'm out there first, I do the people across the street from me, people behind me. I mean, you just do it. But I just really think we need to concentrate on that more because either people aren't able to do it, but I don't understand where they'll do the front of the house and not the side of the house. There's also, I always say, there's this woman that I know is older than myself, and she is out 3, 4, 5 times a day doing her walks, and that's the person I think about when it comes to her trudging through the snow. So whether it be anywhere, those are the people that you have to consider because they do it for exercise. And it's their need. She doesn't drive, so she does have to walk. So those are the people I think we need to consider when we clean our sidewalks. And if you know somebody that's a senior citizen that can't get out there to do it, lend them a hand. I mean, we try to keep people in their homes for as long as they can, no matter how old they are. So if we can have that consideration, if there's a neighbor that needs help, it's only another 15 minutes to do their sidewalk. So that's something else to consider. If it's in your neighborhood, help out. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regard to the snow emergency, I received a call this morning from a woman that said, isn't there something that the city can do to get people to move their cars off the road so that snowplows could come through? She wasn't able to go to work this morning. She got out of her driveway, got stuck, tried to go down the road, got stuck again, ended up just turning around and going back home. Our police officer came down the street. I think he was writing tickets, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he got stuck. There were cars that I guess habitually get parked on the street. So she was pleading with me, isn't there something that the city can please do? And I don't know if we give out the tickets, if we then go back to them and say, how come you didn't move your car? If they have no room in their driveway, that's the reason, couldn't pull into my driveway, no room, too many cars. Maybe we can encourage them to ask a neighbor, okay, there's going to be a snow emergency tomorrow. Would you mind if I shared your driveway? I'm out of answers. I have no way to go, and any suggestions from anyone? Mr. Vanderpool, were you able to talk to anyone about that?
Councilwoman Koski, we did make contact with the resident today. As I mentioned, it's very difficult to knock on every door and say, you need to move your car off the street. We do the best we can with enforcement. We have about 10 to 12 people out enforcing the restriction throughout the snow emergency. We follow the snow plows to make sure first that they can get through. In some cases, then we circle back and enforce other areas. You know, one thing the city council could consider is increasing the fine amount. We lowered it to 25 a few years ago. By the way, I didn't recommend that, but we lowered it to 25. We could increase it back up to 75 where it was to make it a little more punitive and to get more attention. I think $25 is very low. So that's one thing the city council could consider, and that's something you could do in short order. Aside from that, you know, we'll continue to promote the restriction, but as you know, we've promoted this for years and years and years and years, and still we have this about the same number of people, it seems, that violate it, and it's not necessarily the same people.
Maybe that's something that council should look at. We've got budget coming up, so I would strongly recommend that you recommend to us to increase the rate. One other thing, I received a little thank you from the U.S. Census Bureau in regard to our participation, and so through the chair to Ms. Ruska, have we heard what our count is? How many people do we now have in Sterling Heights?
Ms. Riska.
No, we have not. To my knowledge, I don't know that they've confirmed those numbers yet.
If I could interject,
Go ahead, Mr.
if you don't mind, Mayor, thank you. Councilman Koski, not only have we not heard, we're supposed to hear by, I believe March was the date, but it looks like they're going to delay the results for 6 months is what we're hearing. So it could be months before we get the final numbers. So we shall see. We're all waiting anxiously.
Any guess?
Any guess when, or the population number?
130.
Well, if you go by SEMCOG, SEMCOG is projecting that Sterling Heights will become the 3rd largest community in the state. Now, will it be this census or the next one? Time will tell. It's going to be a very close finish for sure.
Come on, let's have a little wager here. What do you think?
My money's on Sterling Heights.
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. You know, I think Mr. Vanderpool is right about the ticketing situation in terms of getting full compliance. I'm not sure that we're ever going to get that. I looked on Facebook today, and there was a lot of discussion about the snow emergency, and some of the things that I saw anecdotally were that some people were saying, I saw one commenter say, I was in phase 2 last year and I got a ticket. I don't understand why. So there's some misunderstanding there, and that if one person is saying it, there's probably others that feel that way. And I know generally the complaint I typically hear is the other way. They say, I was in phase 1, the street got plowed, my car was parked on the street, and I still got a ticket. We don't actively go out looking to ticket cars that are on the street after the street's already been plowed. But, you know, it's hard to say exactly what happened in that situation. There are people another commenter I saw today said, I've got 4 or 5 cars and I've got room in my driveway for 3 or 2 or whatever it was. And so I have to park on the street. I'll always park on the street. It's just something I have to do. So there's people like that. We have, I know that when you have 45,000 households, there aren't a lot of houses for sale, but there are constantly people moving in and moving out of the city. So you're going to constantly have a newer population that maybe doesn't understand all of the roles and responsibilities. So I think you add that all up and you're going to have a few hundred cars. And I frankly, I bet it's not quite 99% compliance because we can't get to all the cars that there are. And I think we're constantly around this 400 or 500 number because it's probably just the capacity of what our code enforcement officers can do. I wish there was a way that we could get higher compliance because it really does stink when you have a snowfall like this and the plows can't get to every inch of the roadway. But we'll continue to get the word out and do everything we can. I'm not sold on increasing the fine because I doubt that there are many people who say, I'm going to park on the street even though I know I'm not supposed to because the fine's only $25 and big deal, I'll just pay it. There might be some people that say that, but I don't know that that's a significant portion of the population. The reason it was dropped several years ago is that there were a number of people complaining saying, I didn't know. I didn't realize it. I get it now. I'll never do it again. But geez, $75. I mean, like we were hearing people say, you know, I parked in this, I ran into my house, and when I came back, there was a ticket. So we wanted to do something to help the residents and not make it punitive, but just give them incentive to know, you know, you can't park on the street. And my feeling was, once you get a $25 ticket, yeah, $25 isn't a ton of money, but it is a big hassle. You got to call up, you got to, you know, write a check, you got to put it in the mail, you got to set a court date, you got to, there's an administrative hassle to it, and it's an experience that you don't want to have happen again. Whether it's at $25 or $75, I feel like it's still an incentive to get people off the street. My guess is that if we raise it to $75, we're going to give out 500 tickets at the next snow emergency. So I don't know that that's the best thing for our residents. And better news, I guess, depending on your perspective, it's 10 o'clock right now, which means our DPW drivers have been about 12 or 13 hours into a shift, and they've got another 5 or 6 hours to go. They're doing an incredible job out there, and they're working their butts off. They're working hard. They're doing the road just as fast as they possibly can and as safely as they possibly can. They're going to work 16-hour shifts. They're going to go home. They're probably not going to go to sleep because if you work 16 hours driving in a car, you go home. I know after council meetings, I don't just fall right asleep. I'm up and wired and I can't go to bed for a few hours. So they're going to get home. They're probably not going to go to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning. And then they're going to wake up at 5:30 or 6 and get back on the road. So I want to give them a shout out for all the hard work that they're doing and thank them for helping keep our city safe. We talk a lot about the police officers and firefighters that keep our city safe. These DPW workers are directly responsible for keeping our people safe, getting those roads cleared so that they can get to their jobs, that the emergency vehicles can get through, and people can get their kids back to school tomorrow, please. And that's a message to all the superintendents out there, please. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.